So here we begin with Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 1st chapter, text 15. This is after Sukadeva Goswami's initial introduction, appreciation of Maharaj Parikat's question about how he should prepare for his death, and then a short explanation by Sukadeva that in order to answer your question, how to prepare for life, for death, I'll speak the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I learned from my father. And there was a short description at the end of lesson 2 about hearing from Atma Vit, someone who's knowledgeable about the Atma. And you may remember as a short review that there are some people who will be interested in these topics. Those are Atma Ramas, people interested in Atma Vidya, and those that are not interested in these topics. They're absorbed in the things of this material world. So now Sukadeva Goswami is extremely systematic because I've read ahead and have created the course materials. I'm amazed at how systematically, it's like a curriculum. He's bringing the listener, Maharaj Parikat and others, step by step, closer and closer to, and further into God realization, as we'll see even in today's meeting. So let me read this one and speak a little bit about it. And then we'll go through other people's reading and their explanations of some of the verses. So if you'd like to participate in that, please click the raise my hand and let Vaishnavi know that you want to participate in that. We'd love to hear your realization. So text 15. At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death, but one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it, and all desires thereof. And the 2 points that jumped out at me from this purport are: death is a process of changing the body at the end of the duration of the present life. An intelligent person must prepare for this and must try to have the best type of body in the next life. The best type of body is a spiritual body, which is obtained by those who go back to the kingdom of God or enter the realm of Brahman. In the 2nd canto of this chapter, this matter will be broadly discussed, but as far as the change of body is concerned, one must prepare now for the next life. Death is nothing but sleeping for a few months in order to develop another term of bodily encagement. And this was italicsed, which we are awarded by the laws of nature according to our aspiration. Therefore, one has only to change the aspiration during the course of this present body. And for this, there is need of training in the current duration of human life. This is a root concept, right at the root, at the beginning of the book, or at the beginning of Sukadeva Goswami's presentation. That's where the root lies. He's speaking about changing our aspiration and a meditation on how we have obtained this material body, why we're in it, why we're forced to take on these material bodies, reveals the depths of consciousness. It's not just the superficial awakened consciousness of the experience we have through our senses. We see things, we hear them, we have some connection with our thinking process as we pay attention to that inner voice. But what actually determined our accepting and being forced into this particular body? It came from our past actions. And the subtle body, the way it was molded in our previous life, when that subtle body left our previous body, it was sent to the womb of an appropriate mother according to our mentality, our aspirations. And we're living out those aspirations now from our previous life. So what's being stated here is that one must desire a spiritual body, and an eternal body, which is our actual conscious self, and that there's a training program, a process for obtaining and developing that spiritual body. This is what Sukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Pariksit, how to obtain your spiritual body. So now let us proceed to text 16. And Karna, if you're able to read and unmute yourself, you had some nice realizations that I saw in your forum entry, and would like to call on you. Vaishnavi, is she available?
Karna,
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Read this purport, the verse and purport, and then share your realizations, how you came to that topic that you shared in your forum.
Oh, okay. One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place, he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place, duly sanctified. So I don't have my answers there, but I'll tell you what my feeling was when I heard the word lonely place. I couldn't help but think Prabhupada was in his lonely place when he stepped on that gangplank to go up to the ship, and just so courageous and fearless. That is such a step when you go away alone for something intangible, not for a business or self-glorification, to a place, a lonely place, where he's the only Vaishnav. I just can't imagine the fear and the courage it took to walk up that gangplank. And I always think of him like that. So when the lonely jumped out, I thought, yes, that's our spiritual master. And the other thing is that I think I said something about, oh yeah, COVID. We're all lonely. So instead of being in a place of depression, you know, everybody's so used to their outdoor material activities. So we should actually turn inside and be proud that we're in this lonely place.
Take advantage of the situation.
Right.
Wonderful. Let me read the notes from the purport. To prepare oneself for the better next life, one must get out of one's so-called home. It's amazing. It's not something we often like to hear, but this is the very first step. The first instruction is that this home life, this family entanglement is something that has to be dealt with intelligently and maturely and spiritually, ultimately. The system of Varnashram Dharma, or Sanatan Dharma, prescribes retirement from family encumbrances as early as possible after one has passed 50 years of age. Modern civilization is based on family comforts, the highest standard of amenities, and therefore after retirement, everyone expects to live a life of very comfortable life in a well-furnished home, decorated with fine ladies and children, without any desire to get out of such a comfortable home. Vaishnavi, do we have any raised hands of someone else who might want to share?
I don't see any raised hands, but can I call Ekadashi? I don't know.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hi.
Am I reading or what
No,
am I doing? I'm
just
sorry.
sharing some realizations on this topic.
Well, this is something that I have been thinking about quite a bit, because in so many places, even just in this section, Prabhupada says, he talks about leaving home as soon as, you know, at 50 years of age. I mean, it's like over and over and over again. And yeah, so, and I'm already past that. So, and I think a lot about, you know, the way to do that, as you said, in a mature way. Yeah, so this is part of it for me, is just, you know, trying to read more and study in a more, in a more official sort of way, like taking this course. And yes, and I feel like this is kind of the beginning steps for me to something that I would like to do, because I see the importance of following this, well, or obviously following all the instructions, but of following this and how to do that in an intelligent way.
Okay, thank you. So let's see how Sukadev progresses along this. Now, this is interesting. The first sentence says, the holy places all over the world. So it's not just Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, or holy places in India. The holy places, and you can see that by the graph, by the picture. I looked up holy places all over the world and found this map of pilgrimage places around the world and in practically every country. The holy places all over the world are meant for the residential purposes of retired persons getting ready for a better next life. Intelligent persons must go there at the end of life, and for that matter, after the age of 50, to live a life of spiritual regeneration for the sake of being freed from family attachment, which is considered to be the shackle of material life. One is recommended to quit home just to get rid of material attachment, because one who sticks to family life until death cannot get rid of material attachment. As long as one is materially attached, one cannot understand spiritual freedom. So back to my original point about how we've obtained this body. It deals with desires and aspirations which are even subconscious in a realm that otherwise, how is it that we can't just give them up? Intellectually, we may be able to deal with them, but to actually create an aspiration to get freed from this material body means to get freed also from the attachments of this identity with the body, which generally manifest with family and intimate associates. So the places, or the holy places, it's a great responsibility. And unfortunately, I've lived, Samapriya and I have both lived in holy dhams, generally in ISKCON centers, in Vrindavan, Mayapur, and Jagannath Puri. Of course, in Jagannath Puri, there was hardly anybody there, so it was conducive. But there are a lot of family activities going on, even in ISKCON centers, in holy places. And in this purport, Prabhupada indeed talked about not going to a holy place and reestablishing the same family attachments that one had left. Some people even leave their families. We know this from early ISKCON days. People would take sannyas, leave their families and children, and then go and start it up again because that tendency hadn't really been rooted out from its core. So let's go to the next one. Another intimate.
Haribol,
Yes.
can I make a comment? This is Nanda.
Sure, Nanda, Haribol.
Hare Krishna. So Nectar of Instruction describes details and principles. So is this a detail or a principle? In other words, my question is leaving home. It seems like a principle.
Nice. Good point.
But
A person has to be. I would proffer that a person has to be a bit introspective. Again, that's why I said mature renunciation rather than just sentiment, or like you say.
yeah.
On the principle. Good point.
So then the question is that, so it's the principle that we need to apply in our life, and the detail, at least in my mind, it just keeps screaming, although I'm not opposed to the principle of leaving home when one is over 50, but my mind keeps screaming that somehow or other, the facilities, at least that are here, are conducive to that, the detachment. And
Can I say something?
Go ahead,
May I
Sam.
speak?
Sure.
I agree with you 100%, Nandaji. it is a principle, and the principle is to become more Krishna conscious and detached from external matters. And whatever facility is the detail, how that is done, to become, in other words, become more attached to Krishna. And that's a very personal thing, you know.
Yeah.
So it's to give up our material attachments, to cultivate that place in the heart and where Krishna is residing, and do things in our lives to have that become more of the center of our activities, rather than affiliation with material relationships and obligations. So,
Thank you.
and you, is that what you're indicating, Nandaji?
Yes, kind of, sort of. Thank you. It's like practically speaking, when I think of, okay, now my husband's dead, now I don't have any real attachments to be here.
Right.
Should I sell everything and go to Vrindavan and struggle to live in Vrindavan?
Yeah,
It just sounds like such an endeavor at this time that better my time is spent here studying Srimad Bhagavatam with you guys. And it's, you know what I mean? But is that the trick of the mind? Am I
No, I like your discrimination of principle and detail. It's the principle. Obviously, the principle is the important, more meaningful function. Utility is the principle. What is the utility? Like you gave the example. Going to Vrindavan, not only would you struggle, you'd only be able to stay there for a few months before you had to renew your visa and come back and spend all that money coming back again, and then struggling to make the airfare. So many different details restrict that.
And also, you just showed a map of where there are holy places all over the world. What to speak of Alachua? There's at least 5,000 temples in Alachua.
Huh.
So this is also
okay. So we don't get too caught up, but thank you, Nanda. That was a beautiful, important topic. Let's move on. Vaishnavi, do we have somebody who can read the next section?
There's no hand up, but maybe Nanda can read.
Sure. It is essential that one practice self-control by celibacy without the least desire for sex indulgence. For a man desiring to improve the condition of his existence, sex indulgence is considered suicidal or even worse. Therefore, to live apart from family life means to become self-controlled in regard to all sense desires, especially sex desires. The method is that one should have a duly sanctified sitting place made of straw, deerskin, and carpet, and thus sitting on it, one should chant the holy name of the Lord without offense, as prescribed above. The whole process is to drag the mind from material engagements and fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. This simple process alone will help one advance to the highest stage of spiritual success.
Right. And there was quite a lengthy description of the importance of brahmacharya or celibacy in order to become detached. Again, back to our original core concept that the aspirations and desires, and we all know that sex, pleasure, is deeply rooted in the subconscious. It affects one on that level. And we'll read later in descriptions of the universal form that we're coming to, how that pleasure originally exists in the Supreme, but our perverted desires transform that within the tiny living entity into something else. So these are the roots that need to be destroyed in order to obtain a spiritual body. So now we'll go on to the next one. Now, text 17. Somebody else we can read, Vaishnavi?
I don't have any hands up.
How about Gopapatni?
Okay, sure.
Gopapatni ji.
Unmute.
Unmute. Unmute yourself, Gopa. She can't, she said.
Madhuri Leela, can you go?
Okay, I did it. Can you hear me?
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's text 17, correct?
Yes.
Okay, translation. After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the three transcendental letters A-U-M. And by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed. Could I continue with the purport?
Yes.
Purport, let's do the Prabhupada. Omkara, or the Pranam, Va, is the seed of transcendental realization, and it is composed of the three transcendental letters A-U-M. By its chanting by the mind in conjunction with the breathing process, which is transcendental but mechanical way of getting into trance, as devised by the experience of great mystics, one is able to bring the mind, which is material absorbed, under control. This is the way of changing the habit of the mind. The mind is not to be killed. Mind or desire cannot be stopped. But to develop a desire to function for spiritual realization, the quality of engagement by the mind has to be changed. The mind is the pivot of the active sense organs. And as such, if the quality of thinking, feeling, and willing is changed, naturally the quality of action by the instrumental senses will also change.
Now the next,
Omkara
Yeah.
is the seed of all transcendental sound.
Gopapatni,
Oh, I'm
about-
sorry. Hello.
you're reading beyond what I've only taken out special sections
I'm
of the
sorry.
text, and I don't know if you can
Okay.
see it properly. Thank you. This next slide, if somebody can read from that also, deals more with this topic of Omkar and the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and their relationship, so we can apply it to our own
Okay.
circumstance.
Devanatha, can you go next?
Yeah. This Omkara is a note of address, such as, "Oh my Lord," just as Om Hari Om means, "Oh my Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead." As if I explained before, the Lord's holy name is identical with the Lord Himself. So also is Omkara. But persons who are unable to realize the transcendental personal form or name of the Lord on account of their imperfect senses, in other words, the neophytes, are trained to the practice of self-realization by this mechanical process of regulating the breathing function and simultaneously repeating the pranava omkara within the mind.
Thank you.
Ram, should I
Thank you,
continue?
Prabhu. Let me just, I know Madhurya Leela wrote in her forum, it was kind of a question. She didn't make a statement, but this idea of regulating the breathing along with chanting. Sometimes devotees have this question because Omkar and chanting Om in this Astanga Yoga process, which is being described by Sukadev, and chanting, although there are interrelating aspects to it, there are also some separate elements which are different. This is a mechanical method. Breathing is one of the practices. Pranayam is one of the steps to reach deeper levels of consciousness. There's yama, niyama, then there's asana, then pranayam. And one starts, after one does and don'ts, do's and don'ts, yama, niyama, then asana, one sits down in a quiet place. Then pranayam, one starts to meditate on their breathing. As one becomes more and more absorbed in the breathing, the external world becomes less and less distractive, and one enters into a stage called pratyahara. Pratyahara means that the senses become more and more, less and less externally distracted, and one becomes more and more absorbed in their breath, in their self, in their inner voice, Pratyahara leads to dharana, which is the beginning of meditation, then dhyana, which is actual meditation, and finally samadhi. And that's why it takes thousands of years to enter into those higher stages of the yoga practice, because it's a gradual mechanical process. So sometimes people equate this breathing with chanting. And personally, I've found it very distracting to meditate on my breathing while trying to do the chanting. Better to hear the holy name and simply chant. Prabhupada never taught that we should regulate our breathing along with our chanting, but the principle, again, back to what Nanda was talking about, the principle and the detail. The principle is that the mind should come under control, not that we're chanting Hare Krishna while externally absorbed in so many other things or thoughts. The idea is to drag the mind. What did we read here? To drag the mind to think of the Supreme Lord. So that's one principle. Manvantara, can you read this section from Srila Prabhupada's lecture, please? Make sure you unmute yourself.
From Srila Prabhupada's lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, 1, July the 1st, 1970. So this Om means addressing the Lord. And all the Vedic mantras they're addressing. On this Hare Krishna mantra, Maha Mantra, this is also addressing Hare Hare, addressing the energy of the Lord, Hara. The energy is Hara, Radha, Sita. So when a female is addressed, it is like that. Hare, late, Siti, Radhe. So Hare means addressing first. First of all, the energy. The impersonalists, they do not know this. This addressing, first of all, Krishna's energy. We Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we don't worship Krishna alone. Ekada Vasudeva. No, we must worship Krishna along with his energy. Just like Krishna Arjuna. Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna is also energy, living entity, and Krishna, Radha Krishna, his internal energy, and marginal. It's not visible on the screen.
Okay. The last sentence says, so Krishna means his energy. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And the reason that I put these two together is that Sukadev has described leave home, go to a private place, a lonely place, and begin to chant Om. But here, for our practical practice, we see that chanting Hare Krishna is the same. And we all know that there are subtle points in the worship of Radha Krishna or Sitaram, or the energy of the Lord. Oh, Hare Krishna Mahamantra actually means, oh, Hare, oh, energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service, rather than the external energy. So our process and the process that Sukadev Goswami is prescribing for Maharaj Pariksit to prepare for death, to attain a spiritual body, are the same. And this last 18, somebody else? I can't see the names.
Madhuri Leela, can you go?
Okay, very well. Gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities, and by intelligence, the senses will be controlled. The mind, too, absorbed in material activities, can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Note from purport, the mind, although ceasing to think of sensual activities at present, remembers past sensual activities from the subconscious status, and thus disturbs one from 100% engagement in self-realization. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami recommends the next step of assured policy, namely to fix one's mind in the service of the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Also recommends this direct process in the Bhagavad Gita 647. Thus, the mind being spiritually cleansed, one should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, by the different devotional activities of hearing, chanting, etc. If performed under proper guidance, that is the surest path of progress, even for the disturbed mind.
Madhurya, can you expand a little bit on these, this point that the mind still remembers past sensual activities from the subconscious status, disturbing one from percent engagement in self-realization, and Srila Prabhupada's explanation that acting in devotional service is the prescribed method, which will, as it says here, if performed under proper guidance, it is the surest path of progress, even for the disturbed mind.
Well, yes, there's lots of impressions from previous lives that surface in one's mind, especially when you start chanting and trying to focus. I find they come up, and even from this life, they come up, just things that happened earlier in your years, just impressions that have, like little photos as you go through life, they're impressed upon your mind. And so the only way to do it is to focus oneself, attentively chanting, I think that's the key word, is attentively, being very focused and not have, thinking about other things while you're chanting.
Thanks. Does anybody else have some experience of practices that help us be attentive and absorbed in our service? Any comments?
I can share something.
Sure.
One thing that helps me is to enunciate very clearly, even to the point where sometimes I might exaggerate a little bit, like the way I move my mouth, just because it kind of, I don't know, it kind of gives me something to do, but I'm still chanting, and it helps to bring me back to hearing the holy name and focusing on what I'm doing, chanting.
Has anyone developed a practice of meditation on Krishna while they're chanting that they can share?
I do that. I go on a parikram.
Ah, I see.
And
Nice.
it's the same parikram every day. And
Every
that
single,
helps.
every single day you go on, you go around the same places.
Yeah, it's a standard parikram that I go on, and I've even taken pictures of those places,
Beautiful.
when I was there.
Yeah.
So, and so it lasts as long, my attention lasts as long as I'm meditating on that. But it's hard afterwards. So I try to think of different places.
Samapriya, can you share a little bit about yours?
Well, I meditate on Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastika for a part of the rounds that I chant. I go through one Shikshastika and meditate on the meaning of it. It could take me a few rounds, actually, just to understand the deep meaning of Shikshastika. And sometimes in the beginning, I've been doing this for about probably 15 years or so, maybe more. But sometimes several rounds it takes to meditate on one Shikshastika. And then for 16 rounds, sometimes I had only done 3 Shikshastika consecutively. Because there's such profound things. The Shikshastika is the essence of the Vedas. So that to understand what Lord Chaitanya is saying in these verses is a very meaningful thing. And since I've been doing it for many years, just like you have, Madhurya Leela, you've been doing a parikrama, and my husband also has his process of meditation. Just like anything else in devotional service, if we're steady, it becomes very, very meaningful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, want to go
I have a
on
question about that. What you just said, Samapriya, Prabhu. so what I think of are like pictures in my mind, but you're thinking about verses. So I don't really understand how you think of that and chant.
Okay, so it begins a verse. It begins a verse or a line of the verse. The Sankirtan is the prime benediction for humanity at large. Then it becomes very, very deep into a mood and a realization of what that actually means. Do you understand?
So does that take away from your focus on hearing the holy name?
No, not at all. It encourages my focus because that's my means of communication. That's my means of realization. Chanting the holy name is the means.
Does it also, doesn't it weave what Lord Chaitanya is saying in each one of those prayers is a mood? And
yes.
While chanting, if you're meditating on that statements, on that mood, then that also awakens within you while chanting that mood. Am I right?
Yeah, it's not literal anymore. It doesn't become, it's not like words. It becomes, nama guna rupa lila, how everything expands from the holy name, but it is the same as the holy name. So the essence of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya can awaken in your heart by chanting Hare Krishna.
Right. Okay, so now we're at the point where Sukadev has talked about sitting down and chanting Om. Now he's going to progress to the next step. Radha Sylvester, can you read this one, please? Make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm not using a microphone.
Fine.
Okay. 2:119. Thereafter, you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus, the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to be thought upon, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the ultimate truth, and the mind becomes completely reconciled in him only. Notes from the purport, quote, thinking of Vishnu or meditating upon the transcendental form of Vishnu, specifically upon Lord Krishna, is the last word on the subject of meditation. This meditation may be begun from the lotus feet of the Lord. One should not, however, forget or be misled from the complete form of the Lord. Thus, one should practice thinking of the different parts of his transcendental body, one after another.
Thank you. Again, back to the principle, this principle of meditating on a particular part or of the form of the Lord, like his feet or his ankles or his calves or his knees, but at the same time not forgetting that it's part of a complete body, are part of what we're headed into in this meditation on the Virat Rupa. A lot of people didn't really connect that very, very much in their forums, and Samapriya will expand more on that as we progress. But for this particular purport and verse, let's just note that Sukadev Goswami is progressing now from the point of meditating, from sitting down and leaving home, sitting in a lonely place, chanting, and now beginning to meditate on the different limbs of the Lord. It's a progressive transformation of consciousness from home and external life to internal life of meditating on the Lord. Mohit, can you read this next one? Make sure you unmute yourself.
We cannot hear you.
Not hearing you, Mohit. Okay, sorry, that's not working. Sham Govinda?
One's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of nature. But one can rectify such conceptions by the relation of Vishnu, and thus become pacified by cleansing the dirty things created by them. 2121. O king, by this system of remembrance, and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord under his direct shelter.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Vinod, can you read the purport and speak a little bit on this topic? Vinod Vani, and we need you to unmute.
Sorry. Purport. Success of mystic performances is achieved only by the help of a devotional attitude. Pantheism, or the system of feeling the presence of the Almighty everywhere, is a sort of training of the mind to become accustomed to the devotional conception, and it is this devotional attitude of the mystic that makes possible the successful termination of such mystic attempts. One is not, however, elevated to such a successful status without the tinge and mixture in devotional service. The devotional atmosphere created by pantheistic vision develops into devotional service in later days, and that is the only benefit for the impersonalists. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 12.5 that the impersonal way of self-realization is more troublesome because it reaches the goal in an indirect way, although the impersonalist also becomes obsessed with the personal feature of the Lord after a long time. So you want me to go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, so I looked at some of the commentaries that are translated by Bhanu Swami and others, Burijan, about this section, and I just want to kind of review some of it, which Dhruva Maharaj has already done very well. But basically, Sukadeva Goswami in text 15 through 21, he's describing the path of yoga, and now we're veering a little into the path of the Jnani. So we have to ask why. Sukadeva Parikshit Maharaj has been a devotee of Krishna from his very birth. How is this going to help Parikshit Maharaj? But basically, remember that Sukadeva Goswami is addressing an assembly of sages and yogis, not only Parikshit Maharaj, and therefore it's much like the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna begins his instructions with karma yoga and then gradually progresses through different levels of yoga until finally he comes to the summum bonum, which is bhakti. So in the same way, Sukadeva Goswami is kind of reviewing the basic tenets of the Vedanta system and the sadhana, and recommending the practices of pranayama and dhyan, or meditation, because these practices move the mind away from material samskars toward the spiritual. So this recommendation to become detached is common to all the paths. It's not only for the jnani or the yogi. And we know that this is especially true for neophyte practitioners because how hard it is to turn the mind away. And remembering Srila Prabhupada, in the early days, as much as possible, he encouraged all of us to join the temple because we would have the chance to become immersed in Bhakti Yoga 24/7 in the association of other devotees. And this was very helpful when the outside society is not favorable and we are trying to turn the mind from material to transcendence and become fixed. Therefore, we were given this process, which we were so fortunate to have, to live in the temples and to practice our sadhana bhakti. So I want to point out in verse 21, the Sanskrit mentions yogino bhakti lakshana. So literally, this translates that yoga, which has the quality of bhakti. And here again in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that this system of yoga is an indirect path. It will take one gradually towards detachment from the world and attachment to the personality of Godhead, but it's not directly bhakti. But because it has a touch of bhakti, it has the quality of bhakti, it will attract the personality of Godhead. And as our instructors will show us, this chapter is going to lead us farther and farther towards that goal as we progress through meditation on the impersonal feature of the Lord, the Virat Rupa, etc. Sutta Goswami
Vinod.
Yeah.
Your last statement, and we're getting a little long on time. I'm sorry about that. We're still learning and adjusting. It's a perfect segue.
Okay.
to the next section, because now we've finished more or less lesson 3, and we'll go on to lesson 4. Thank you so much. It was, we'll refine this and learn how to do it more as we progress and give everybody more of a chance. But let's progress now to lesson 4, which will, as Vinod just pointed out, take us deeper into that meditation on the impersonal form of the Lord, but more precisely the Virat Rupa form of the Lord. Okay, Samapriya, you want to take over that then?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. That was very wonderful. And I really liked hearing from you, Vinod, and everyone. And I hope that as we progress into these Zoom programs, everyone will partake more and more. So this next section is about the universal form. First of all, the universal form is the first step in God realization, is the foundation. So, and as Vinod was mentioning, and Prabhupada was mentioning in the previous purport, this has to be viewed in a devotional manner. We're bhakti yogis. So and the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually, the whole Bhagavatam is constructed so that we will fall in love with Krishna. So we have to, there is an art here of viewing the universal form in devotional service, not to satisfy our senses, because that's what brought us here in the first place in the material world. We see the universal form of the Lord in terms of our own desires and sense gratification. So we're transferring that to see the whole thing in devotional service to Krishna. And also there will be references in this section about materialists. We are in the material body. Each one of us has a material body. So in a way, this should make us humble, understanding that basically we're in the material world because we are materialists, and we are learning to become spiritualists by falling in love with Krishna. And also, this is just a little summary of what is ahead in these verses. Unless we can appreciate this universal form of the Lord in terms of devotional service and relation to him, we will not really be able to appreciate the transcendental form of Shamasundar, the threefold bending form, because this is part of his personality, this universal form, and our understanding of it and respect for it and awe about it will help us in our developing our love for Krishna, understanding his greatness. So who can read the, who hasn't read yet, who would like to read?
Mohit can try. Rasa Kumar.
Mohit, are you ready? Can you do that?
Yes, Mataji, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Gotcha.
Okay, so why don't you start reading? And I might interrupt briefly in the middle of the reading so that we can discuss certain points.
Very well, thank you. The fortunate King Pruskit, inquiring further, said, "O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed."
Okay, right there, before we go on real quick, Vinod was mentioning that Parikit, and it's saying in this this purport as well, Parikit is already established in his pure relationship with Krishna. Why is he inquiring this? He is, let us not forget, he is a king. Even in his last 7 days, he is thinking of the welfare of his praja. So though he is established in his relationship with Krishna, this is very important for the rest of the world. He's thinking of the benefit of his praja, how everyone can also come to that position. Go on.
The dirty things in the heart of a conditioned soul are the root cause of all troubles for him. A conditioned soul is surrounded by the manifold miseries of material existence, but on account of his gross ignorance, he is unable to remove the troubles due to dirty things in the heart. accumulated during the long prison life in the material world. He is actually meant to serve the will of the Supreme Lord, but on account of the dirty things in the heart, he likes to serve his concocted desires. These desires, instead of giving him any peace of mind, creates new problems and thus bind him to the cycle of repeated birth and death. These dirty things are fruit of work and empiric philosophy and can be removed only by association with the Supreme Lord.
Okay, so then we see these dirty things in the heart. We're in prison. This is going back to what Nanda said in the very beginning. We are in prison in this material world. And all of our engagement here, if it's not Krishna conscious, is binding us. It's binding us, and our attachments here are binding us and prolonging our prison sentence. So this is why the Bhagavatam is spoken, and this is why Maharaj Parikshit wants his Praja to understand this, and all of us to understand that, first of all, we are in prison, and the dirty things of the heart are keeping us here. So this is a very important thing. Fruit of activity and empiric philosophy. And empiric philosophy is external, our experience. I can't see something, so it doesn't exist. So that is that's an empirical assessment. See? So that's why we hear from someone who has already seen. Go on.
Maybe Rasa Kumar, his wife, can read.
Oh yeah, Rasa, would you like to read?
Sure, thank you, Prabhu. The cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord is a feature of his unlimited potencies. Since the potent and potencies are identical, even the conception of his impersonal cosmic feature helps the conditioned soul to associate with the Lord indirectly and thus gradually rise to the stage of personal contact. Maharaj Parikshit was already connected with the personal feature of the Lord, and as such, he had no need to inquire from Sukadeva Goswami about where and how to apply the mind in the impersonal Virat Rupa of the Lord. But he inquired after a detailed description of the matter for the benefit of others who are unable to conceive of the transcendental personal feature of the Lord as a form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss.
Okay, so this also can apply to us. In reading these things, we should see how this applies to us in our lives. So this is very essential knowledge. We are being exposed to something that's very wonderful. How about you, Faye? Can you read the next verse? Unmute
Make sure
yourself.
you unmute, yeah.
Thank you.
Sukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing processes by the yogic pranayama, and thus control the mind and senses with intelligence, and apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord, called the Virat Rupa. Purport: the material absorbed mind of the conditioned soul does not allow him to transcend the limit of the bodily conception of self, and thus the yoga system for meditation, or controlling the sitting posture and breathing process and fixing the mind upon the Supreme, is prescribed in order to mold the character of the gross materialist. Unless such materialists are able to cleanse the materially absorbed mind, it is impossible for them to concentrate upon thoughts of transcendence. And to do so, one may fix one's mind on the gross material or external feature of the Lord. The different parts of the gigantic form of the Lord are described in the following verses.
So this external energy is what we're talking about. And we have to learn to see it in relation to Krishna. If we learn to see it in relation to Krishna, it will be an impetus for our love for Krishna. Yeah, go on and read this, Faye. Are you still there?
The materialistic men, yes ma'am. The materialistic men are very anxious to have some mystic powers as a result of such a controlling process, but the real purpose of yogic regulations is to eradicate the accumulated dirty things like lust, anger, avarice, and all such material contaminations. If the mystic yogi is diverted by the accompanying feats of the mystic control, then his mission of yogic success is a failure because the ultimate aim is God realization.
So in other words, what does that mean? Excuse me, what does that mean? Do you understand what that means? Faye or anyone? Can you say something? Okay, darling.
If we get hung up in looking at the wrong thing, we're going to miss the ultimate goal, God realization.
Right.
Our focus is on the wrong thing.
Right. Exactly. And that's what this whole section is about. Learning to see everything in the Lord's creation, the whole universal Virat Rupa, in a devotional manner, through devotion. Okay, so let's go to the next slide now. I'm trying to hurry it up a little because I don't want to keep you guys. And here we go.
Ian Lubsey would like to read.
Who is it?
Ian.
Ian, is he here?
Yeah, I see the name. Yeah.
Are you there, Ian?
Make sure you unmute.
Maybe no. Okay, so Manvantara again.
Okay.
Oh,
You hear
he's
me now?
there. Hey, there you are, Ian. Good.
Yeah, my camera is giving me some trouble, so if you can hear me. It's 2:124?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is a personal body of the absolute truth, wherein the universal results and past, present, and future of material time is experience. Should I read the purport?
Yes, please.
The relative world is also his phenomenal representation because it is nothing but an expansion of his transcendental energy. Although he is in his abode, his energy is distributed everywhere. Thus, the sun is localized as well as expanded everywhere. Since the rays of the sun, being non-different from the sun, are accepted as expansion of the sun disk. In Vishnu Purana 1:22-52, it is said that as fire expands its rays and heat from one place, similarly, the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead, expands himself by his manifold energy everywhere and anywhere. The phenomenal manifestation of the gigantic universe is only a part of his Virat body.
Okay.
Can I continue or should I? It's okay.
Go on.
The Ashuras do not accept any evidential proof from the revealed scriptures, nor do they recognize the authority of the great Acharyas. The Virat Rupa manifestation of the Lord is simultaneously a challenge to the atheist and a favor for the Asuras, who can think of the Lord as Virat and thus gradually cleanse the dirty things from their hearts in order to become qualified to actually see the transcendental form of the Lord in the near future. This is a favor of the all-merciful Lord to the atheists and the gross materialists.
So I was thinking of something very wonderful. As devotees, we make offerings to the Lord. Yeah. And Prabhupada quotes this verse in Bhagavad Gita, my hands and my legs and my arms are everywhere. So that means Krishna is all pervasive as the super soul. And if we make an offering to Krishna, that same quality of his expansion, he can accept the offering. You see? So this whole, the point of this whole thing is to understand it in terms of devotional service. Understand the gross material energy in terms of devotional service. Because if we don't understand it in that manner, what was that?
15 minutes,
If we don't understand it like that, we will try to enjoy it and we will become more and more entangled. So there's something that I wanted to do, so I'm going to go to the next verse. I'm trying to hurry up until verse 26 because I have a special surprise for everyone. We're talking about this seeing the universal form in a devotional manner, and there's something very special coming up here. So, Vaishnavi, why don't you read? Thank you, Ian. Vaishnavi, can you read?
Yeah, the 2:125.
Yes.
Okay. The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is a subject for the Virat conception. Purport. Simultaneously, the Lord has multifarious other forms, and all of them are identical with the original fountainhead form of the Lord, Sri Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it has been proven that the original, transcendental, and eternal form of Lord is Sri Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead. But by his inconceivable internal potency, Atma Maya, he can expand himself by multifarious forms and incarnations simultaneously without being diminished by his full potency. He is complete, and although innumerable complete forms emanate from him, he is still complete without any loss. That is his spiritual or internal potency.
So who can say what that reminds you of? What verse does that remind you of? Yeah, right, exactly. This is from the Sri Upanishad. The personality of God is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as the phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. So also in relation to the 24th, oh dear, 24th verse. All right, I'm sorry. Go on reading, Dolly. Go on.
Okay. All the universes in seed are emanating from the breathing of Mahavishnu, who is but part of a partial expansion of the Lord, and all the universes presided over by the Brahmas vanish when the Mahavishnu withdraws his great breath. In this way, the material worlds are being created and vanished by the supreme will of the Lord.
Also, I remembered what I was going to say about the 24th. This material world is a place of time and karma. Even though we are seeing the Lord in a personal manner through this, we must understand that if we don't see it like that, we will be victimized by time and karma.
Yeah.
So this is a really important. It's important to visualize the material world in a devotional manner. Otherwise, we will have to become here repeatedly, and we're all tired of that, are we not?
Yeah.
Okay. Please go to the next verse, because this is what I wanted to offer you something very special. Would anyone like to read this verse?
Narayan, he didn't go. Maybe he would like to read.
Narayan?
Unmute.
Not? Okay, Gopa, you do it.
Okay.
Unmute, Gopa. Good. Unmute.
Unmute.
She can't find her little.
No, not hearing her.
I'll read it.
Okay.
The 2:126. Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patal constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatal planets, the ankles are the Mahatal planets, and his shanks are the Talatal planets. Purport.
Okay. Yeah.
Should I read the purport?
Yes, Shobha, that's you. There's so many. Nice to hear your voice. Very good, sweetie. Please read it.
Outside the bodily existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the manifested cosmic existence has no reality. Everything and anything of the manifested world rests on him, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4. But that does not imply that everything and anything in the vision of the materialist is the Supreme Personality. The conception of the universal form of the Lord gives a chance to the materialist to think of the Supreme Lord, but the materialist must know for certain that his visualization of the world in the spirit of lording over it is not God realization. Unless the service attitude is revived, the conception of Virat realization will have very little effect on the seer.
So this is all going along in the same with the same point. We must learn to see the universal form of the Lord with devotion. And one of the ways that we can visualize that is meditating on the lotus feet of our Istadev, or that form of the Lord that we're most attracted to, and understanding what's coming from that. What do they symbolize? They symbolize the lower planetary systems. So I would like to at this time present something very wonderful that was put together by my god brother Mangalananda many years ago, and it's called O Govinda, and this is to show us how we can learn to see this universal form with devotion. So please watch this.
Lord, the sun's effulgence hide your face. Your blissful form lies far beyond my eyes. But now your wonders call my heart's embrace, as dawn displays your beauty in the skies. The rainbow shows the colors of your dress. The movements of the moon reflect your mind. Your smiling is the cause of happiness. And love exists because you are so kind. Oh, Govinda, within my heart, celestial herdsman rode inside one. Your precious gift of love impart. Oh, you who stand behind the sun, you're the one. You're the one in my heart. In my heart. The rolling rivers flow forth from your veins. The clouds that fill the sky come from your hair. The seeds of life are watered by your rains. From your breathing blows the mighty air. My Lord, you are the source of all I see. Your movements are the passing days of time. You are the resting place of all that be. And love exists because you are so kind. Oh, Govinda, within my heart, celestial herdsman rode inside one. Your precious gift of love impart. Oh, you who stand behind the sun, you're the one. You're the one in my heart. In my heart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so that is a personal realization of the universal form through bhakti yoga. I can't say, and after seeing that, does anyone have any comment to make? This for me stimulates love for Krishna in my heart. This is what we have to see around us. And this is how the universal form is a magnificent display of Krishna's loving divine energy. What do you think, Vinod? Can you say something? Unmute, darling, unmute.
I have nothing to say. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Okay. How about Gopa? Where is she? Is she there? Gopa, can you speak now? Can you hear?
I know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that song brings me way back. Bhakti's going to the airport, and I actually, it brought tears to my eyes.
Of course.
And it was just so wonderful being a new devotee and having listening to that. I guess we had it on an 8-track tape or something because it flew into the van. And at that time, Prabhupada's tapes were only cassette tapes. So we actually listened to that whole album constantly going to the airport and home from the airport every day.
Well, thank you. That's so true, and we've all experienced it. But the point is that that's what we were trained by Srila Prabhupada to see. That's how we were trained to see the universal form of the Lord. And through a humble attitude of understanding that we came to this world as materialists, and Srila Prabhupada has blessed us by helping to transform our vision so that we could actually see all of this creation of the Lord through love. And through meditating on our Istadev, and this is Shamasundar, the beautiful Shamasundar form, and it's all coming from him, and this is an aspect of him that we can really relish. So, what do you think, Karna? Unmute, darling. Unmute. I guess it's hard to unmute.
Okay. Yeah, the button doesn't really react.
Okay.
So, well, I don't know. I was just lost in the words and shocked at the nice association that we have as a God family. Just hearing, our God brothers' realizations, and so beautiful. I've never seen that video before. So thank you so much for playing it, and just value our association so much. Like, what great souls Prabhupada captured.
Hare Krishna. Manvatari, you want to say one last thing, darling, before we end this session?
Yeah, thank you for sharing the video. And I just have one question, if you don't mind. I'm glad you asked because I can't find the raising hand on here. The universal form, we understand that everything is absolute, Krishna, it is Krishna. But it also talked about, and I couldn't find it in the text and the purport, where it discussed how, the planets, Lord Shiva planet also being annihilated, and Lord Brahma into the breath of Mahavishnu. And it was just disturbing to see how Krishna, being this Varup personality form, and trying to understand the representation of like Lord Shiva's planet and Lord Brahma's planet being reabsorbed.
Well, this material world is temporary. It's a temporary existence. And the souls come here because they want to forget about Krishna. But Krishna is so kind that he appears in many different incarnations and sends his representatives to instruct and help us understand our eternal relationship with him for our true benefit. Everything here is temporary. This is, I mean, we're hearing so many people are dying and being born and dying, and we're always shocked at this. We're shocked at death. A god brother just left his body, Hamsa Avatar. We're shocked. Someone's mother-in-law left. So another person's wife left. Every day we're hearing, maybe it's because we're getting older, and when you get old, then your whole world around you starts to die. But this is part of, we're in Mitra Loka. This is the land of death. And with this knowledge that has been given us, we can understand that we do not have to go through this anymore. This whole world will die. That doesn't mean Lord Shiva, doesn't mean the incarnations of God, that doesn't mean the spiritual energy dies, but the nature of this material world is that it gets withdrawn back into the body of Mahavishnu to put another set of creations into play. So I think that we should concentrate on our eternal nature, so that, and Prabhupada said, we will not have to take birth again. If we take all of this seriously, when we're hearing that give up family life, give up these things, give up anything that doesn't help us in our Krishna consciousness, you see. And because we are running out of time, and we don't want to go through this again. The world is in a chaotic situation. We don't want to go through this again, and we want to help others to the best that we are capable to save them from the grief of this material world. And it said somewhere in the Bhagavatam, I used to have this quote, that the smiling face of the Lord dries up the ocean of tears that is caused by the grief of the conditioned souls. So our main purpose is to read the Bhagavatam, fill our minds and consciousness with Bhagavatam, with the holy name, with divine association, and let go of this cycle of birth and death. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes,
Putting everything into perspective then, this is the first step that Sukadev Goswami is describing. There is one more section, one more lesson that will stay with this chapter, which will be posted tomorrow night, Sunday night. And then next Wednesday, we'll start chapter 2, the Lord in the Heart. So next Saturday, we'll be speaking on those two topics. But the whole thing is like little bricks. Each brick put together with the other ones builds the structure. So keep attention to these different steps that Sukadev Goswami is presenting. I think it's helpful. Jai.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Jai, oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
everyone. Hare Bol.
Glories to Srila
All the
Prabhupada.
glories
Hare
to Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada.